In 1975 in Puerto Rico, a farmer saw most of his goats lying lifeless on the ground. He got closer and saw that the animals were stiff and had 2 puncture marks on their necks. Goats were not the only animals that were hurt. Many pigs, cows, and geese lost their lives too. They all had the same distinctive bite marks on their necks, and all had been drained of their vital fluids. The locals immediately jumped to conclusions and blamed dogs, and the authorities didn't bother to do a better investigation and just said dogs had done it without looking for any proof. A couple of days later, though, many more animals were found deceased. Among them was a cow that had literally been opened, and it had a lot of scratches on its head. The farmer next door reported that his chickens had been destroyed by something. In just a few weeks, the creature took the lives of 90 farm animals. After some time, another farmer said that 10 of his goats had been drained, 7 had been hurt, and 11 were missing. This time, the authorities didn't waste any time and started the monster hunt, but they had no luck finding the culprit. The incident was all over the local newspaper, and the beast was named the Vampire of Mocha. The incident caught the attention of the Agricultural Commission, and scientist Juan Rivera was tasked to solve this otherworldly mystery. His first suspect was a Puerto Rican boa. This non-venomous snake can grow to be a little over 6 feet. Still, its diet consists of only small prey. It's also very shy of humans and other animals. It avoids bigger creatures at all costs. You're more likely to see fish climbing trees than this boa taking down a whole cow. Near the crime scene, a large cave was discovered, and we all know that weird creatures like living in dark, cold caves. In the cave, they found some crazy-looking bats. As we've seen in movies, bats can turn into vampires, so they must be the culprit. But no, bats were as innocent as they could be. Their favorite food wasn't cows or goats, it was figs. They were peaceful fruit-eating bats that didn't care about animals. Again, the researcher hit a wall. Suddenly, all the terror stopped in July 1975. It seemed like the creature had vanished into thin air, but not for long. 2 decades later, 62 miles from the previous site, more animals were found. A local vet examined them. He was terrified to discover that every animal had 2 precisely cut holes like he had never seen before. The animals were anemic and looked like they'd passed away recently. By the looks of it, the creature's favorite food was goats, and that's how it got the infamous name we all heard of, Chupacabra, which means the goat sucker. Dogs, chickens, rabbits, and other animals were not off the menu. In short time, the Chupacabra took 1,000 farm animals. Now, this animal had a name, but people still had zero idea about what the Chupacabra looked like, which was terrifying. In Canovanas, Madeline and her mother reported seeing a weird creature that could have been the Chupacabra. They said it had been walking on 2 legs like a human and resembled a kangaroo. They mentioned that the monster also had spikes on the back, no ears, large dark eyes, and 2 holes for a nose. It had 2 arms with 3 fingers. The Chupacabra seemed to like Madeline's house because her husband and his coworker found it in the garage. They tried to capture it, but didn't succeed. Madeline later drew a detailed sketch of it. Many people saw the sketch and reported seeing a similar creature. They claimed it had strong legs and wings and smelled like sulfur. Take all these descriptions with a grain of salt. If they'd been true, they would have been all over the news. But still, keep in mind these descriptions. They will be important later in the story. In 1976, on some talk show, they talked about the Chupacabra, and the show quickly went viral. Soon, people started reporting having seen a similar creature in Florida and Mexico. Many said that the stories were like a unicorn rodeo. They were totally made up. In Mexico, 2 skeptical inquiries, Patricia and Mario, laid traps around those farms where the Chupacabra had allegedly been seen. They caught some animals in their traps, but no sign of the goat sucker. They only captured wild dogs. The police stated that the Chupacabra was just a wild dog, not a mythical creature. And still, in the next 5 years, there were numerous sightings of the Chupacabra worldwide. On the 13th of August of the year 2000, a farmer from Nicaragua found 25 of his sheep and 35 of his neighbor's sheep hurt. So he decided to take the matter into his own hands. One night, he was patiently waiting in the pitch-black night for the creature to appear. Suddenly, from the corner of his eye, he saw something and managed to hit it. The creature passed away. Finally, they had proof that the Chupacabra was not just a fairy tale. It was a big thing. Later, the Chupacabra was examined by a vet. The vet was shocked because he had no idea what the creature was. Remember Madeleine's description? Well, the vet described the animal differently, but his story turned out to be more plausible. This Chupacabra had large teeth, giant claws, greenish eyes, bat-like skin, and a crest sticking out of its back. The vet concluded that the animal was some kind of hybrid. They thought it was a cross between a wolf and a crocodile, but it sounds like an exaggeration and is hard to believe. We all know that such a mix is impossible. They did some tests on the body at the university in Nicaragua, and the results didn't quite deliver what they had expected. The animal was a wild dog with mange. Mange is an itchy skin disease that causes dogs to lose their hair. It's also highly contagious. When a dog has mange, their skin becomes scaly and wrinkled. When they returned the body, the farmer noticed it wasn't his Chupacabra. 7 years later, another body was found in Texas. Phyllis Cannon returned to her farm and noticed that some of her chickens had passed away. All seemed to be anemic. Later, she saw coyote-looking creatures that didn't have any hair. More of her animals were harmed, so she had to set up cameras on her farm. But unfortunately, like always, she didn't manage to record anything. Surprisingly, she got a call from a local farmer who had found the Chupacabra hit by a car. Later, another body was found much closer to her farm. She took some pictures of the animal, and soon, those images were all over the internet. Phyllis was curious and sent 5 DNA samples to 5 different universities. The results didn't match any animal in the archives. Researchers had no idea what it was, but it wasn't a dog. Phyllis still has one animal in her freezer and a taxidermied specimen in her house. There are many theories about the Chupacabra. Some claim that the animal is a genetically modified monkey that escaped the lab. Others state that it's some mysterious, otherworldly creature. The most consistent hypothesis is that the Chupacabra is a mix between a Mexican wolf and a coyote with mange. Now, do you remember that Phyllis said that she had sent samples to 5 universities and no match had been found? Well, it turned out she hadn't been telling the truth. At one university, they found that the animal was a mix between a coyote and a Mexican wolf and that it had mange. Animals with mange are weak and will likely try to hunt farm animals to survive. People, when they see something they don't know, tend to exaggerate, which is why all witnesses describe the animal differently.
In the late 17th and early 18th centuries, Europe was infested by vampires. The situation got so wild that authorities stepped in, and even military officers investigated these creepy cases. And their conclusion was clear. Yep, vampires are definitely real. Now, we're talking about a long time before Dracula showed up in books and movies. Back then, people genuinely believed those who had passed could rise and drain the living of their blood. Tragically, their victims would not survive the encounter. But vampires didn't stay at rest. Instead, they continued walking, interacting among the living and infesting villages. These beliefs spread rapidly, causing panic across regions. It all kicked off in Eastern Europe, specifically Serbia. Villagers started panicking after mysterious passings occurred one after another. Take the story of Petar Blagojevic, a Serbian peasant who passed in 1725. Shortly after his burial, villagers claimed that Petar returned, knocking on doors and asking for shoes or food. Sounds harmless, right? Well, not really. Within days, those villagers began mysteriously passing away too. 9 people perished in total. Everyone freaked out, insisting Petar was responsible, as if he managed somehow to come back from the grave at night to feast on the living. Eventually, authorities dug up Petar's body to see what was going on. They wanted to check if there were any signs that he was still alive. So they looked closely at his hair, beard, and nails to see if they had grown. And they actually had. In fact, there was no sign of decomposition at all. His body looked fresh. Then they found something even weirder. There was some blood around his mouth. And that was enough for people to say, "See, he's definitely a vampire." Then came Arnold Paoli, arguably the most infamous vampire of them all. He was a soldier who lost his life after falling off a hay wagon and breaking his neck. But there was something strange about it. Before that tragic event, Paoli claimed he had been bitten by a vampire once. Luckily, he said he cured himself by eating soil from the vampire's grave and smearing himself with its blood. Sorry, not exactly dinner table talk, eh? But hey, if he was cured, no one had anything to worry about after he was gone, right? Well, not exactly. Within a month after Paoli was buried, 4 people said they were being tormented by him. And not long after that, they were gone too. 10 days after Paoli was buried, the villagers dug him up, just to be sure everything was, well, normal. And this is where things got eerie. His body hadn't decomposed. His hair, nails, and beard had all grown longer, and fresh blood was dripping from his mouth. Remind you of someone? Yep, our guy Petar. But in Paoli's case, it was more disturbing. The blood wasn't just coming from his mouth. It was pouring from his eyes, nose, and ears. His shirt, his coffin, everything was completely soaked in red. Now terrified, the villagers drove a stake through his heart and burned his body. Oh, and they also dug up the 4 people they believe he had targeted just to be safe. They went through the same process with them just to make sure none of them would return as vampires. Hey, who knows? But their vampire nightmare didn't stop there. A few years later, in the winter of 1731, a new epidemic occurred. 13 people passed within several weeks. Eventually, even local authorities stepped in, sending official investigators to calm things down. Their reports, incredibly, concluded that the vampire attacks were real, at least according to witnesses. That official validation changed everything. They kicked off a wave of vampire hysteria all across Europe. But why was everyone so quick to believe those who had passed away were coming back? One big reason was how little people understood health problems at the time. Bodies that appeared fresh or swollen after burial, blood around mouths, or even fingernails and hair seemingly growing, these natural post-mortem changes were mistaken for supernatural signs. Another thing villagers misunderstood was decomposition itself. Natural gases cause bodies to bloat, making them look as if they had recently been active. This terrifying image reinforced local beliefs that these people weren't at rest, but instead returning to cause harm. Plus, under certain circumstances, the decomposition process can be delayed for a long time. One reason this can happen is because of something called saponification. This is a natural process that happens when a body is buried in a cold and damp place, exactly like in some parts of Eastern Europe. In this kind of environment, the fat in the body can turn into a waxy soap-like substance. This wax covers the body and helps stop it from rotting. Okay, but how to explain the nails and hair growing? It's more like an optical illusion, not real growth. Now what happens is that the skin dries out and pulls back a little. When the skin shrinks like that, it makes things like stubble on the chin or fingernails look longer than they were before. But that's not the case. And what about the blood? Well, it turns out science has an explanation for that too. How long blood stays liquid after someone passes depends a lot on the surrounding temperature. In colder places, it can stay fluid for days. So if a body was dug up, there's a good chance they'd still find liquid blood in the veins. It might have looked strange, even scary, but it was just the cold doing its thing and slowing everything down. Medical researchers today believe that many so-called vampire symptoms match up with conditions like rabies. Back then, most people in these communities kept animals around, and villages were usually near forests full of wildlife. And there's still no truly effective cure for rabies. This condition can cause things like insomnia, aggression, biting, and even a fear of water, which lines up closely with the way vampires were described. So it turns out all these supposed supernatural events had logical explanations. Today, we might make fun or roll our eyes at the idea of real vampires roaming around Eastern Europe. But back then, those fears were taken very seriously. Whole communities were thrown into panic. There are plenty of documented cases where families dug up their loved ones and removed their hearts, all because they believed the person was a vampire behind the strange things happening to the rest of the family. And newspapers across the continent picked up these stories, spreading the fear far beyond where it all started. What's wild is that stories about blood-sucking creatures didn't just show up in Europe. Similar myths popped up across different continents and time periods. In the Philippines, for example, there is the Manananggal, a flying creature that splits in half. In Chile, they've got the Peyote, a shape-shifting being that drains blood. And in Australia, some indigenous tribes told stories of the Yaramayahu, a little red creature that drops out of trees and drinks your blood with suckers on the ends of its hands and feet. How cute. Well, back in Europe, the hysteria faded by the late 18th century, thanks to growing medical knowledge. But as you know, the legend never really went away. It just shifted into literature and gave rise to famous characters like Dracula. The author, Bram Stoker, was inspired by stories that had been going around since the 1700s. But he turned them into romanticized fictional monsters. You know, sharp teeth, pale skin, black clothes, that whole thing. And that was different from what the villagers believed they were dealing with. And, in a way, those frightened villagers weren't completely wrong. Something was draining those people's lives. But it wasn't vampires. It was just misinformation mixed with a whole lot of imagination running wild. So, next time you see a vampire movie or read a scary story, remember that behind the fiction lies a fascinating truth. A real wave of fear, confusion, and panic that swept Europe nearly 300 years ago, leaving a chilling legacy that still fascinates us today.
They look like they come from your worst nightmares. There's no evidence they exist, but all the scary stories about them still sometimes sound so real, passed down from generation to generation. Which one is your favorite? The first creature that probably comes to your mind is Bigfoot, a giant creature that reminds you of an ape and allegedly leaves extremely large footprints and other traces that make people in the area of the Pacific Northwest wonder if it's really there. It's so popular, other similar beasts got their own legends too. Like the Mogollon Monster, something people also call the Arizona Bigfoot. Reported along the Mogollon Rim, this mysterious creature is 7 feet tall and has big red eyes. Stories say its body is covered with long reddish-brown or black hair, besides its face, chest, feet, and hands. It mimics coyotes, birds, and other wildlife, emitting strange whistle sounds at the same time. The creature tends to explore campsites when it gets dark. It builds nests out of twigs, pine needles, and leaves. And if you're in that area and someone is throwing stones from locations you can't see, yep, Mogollon Monster. This creature is omnivorous, which means it eats both plants and animals. And it prefers to wander at night, lurking for innocent prey lost in the woods. Urayuli, a 10-foot mythical creature people say hides in the southwestern woodland parts of Alaska. It's a hulking giant beast, known for its extremely long limbs. Legends say their lanky arms are so long, they reach their ankles. The creature is covered in a thick coat of hair. The only thing you can see on its face, not covered in the hair, is the creature's eerily luminescent eyes. The legend says Urayuli use their glowing eyes to hypnotize their prey. But not us, since stories say they prefer to catch deer. And they're known to be kind towards humans. And some claim the Urayuli are actually just a type of Bigfoot. Wendigo. This terrifying creature is said to be hiding across the northern forests of Canada and the United States. always looking if there's some lost wanderer. The story says the Wendigo used to be a lost hunter. The freezing winters transformed him into a fierce 15-foot-tall beast with desiccated skin tightly pulled over its large, pointy bones. Stories about this creature showed up in the 20th century, and people say the beast still roams around the forest in long, cold winters, constantly looking for lost people he could grab from the darkness. Lake Worth Monster. This scary creature that's part man, part goat is also called the Island Monster. This 7-foot-tall monster is so strong it could hurl car tires like they were just plastic toys. In a worst nightmare scenario, it could appear in the darkness, sailing from the treetops and fiercely landing with full force on the hood of passing cars. That's how the first people who reported its existence described it. Lake Worth is located west of Dallas and east of Fort Worth. There's a landmass in the middle of this mystical lake known as Greer Island. The legend says that's where this scary monster, also known as Fort Worth's answer to Bigfoot, roams. And that's where some skeptics and thrill seekers still go, wandering around and trying to discover if the legend is true. Lurking in the darkness with its scary red eyes, meet the Mothman, a humanoid beast reportedly seen in the 1960s in Point Pleasant in West Virginia. On one cold night in November of 1966, two young couples reported to the police that they saw a big gray creature with glowing red eyes. It looked like a flying man with wings around 10 feet wide. During the next couple of days, more and more people said they saw the same thing. Later, a wildlife biologist from West Virginia University told reporters that these descriptions fit the sandhill crane. It's a big American crane almost as tall as a human being. It has a 7-foot wingspan and circles of red around its eyes. The gigantic bird may have got out of its migration route and started these stories. Or did it really? Fresno night crawlers. They're not that tall, considering they're monsters, about 5 feet. The upper part of their body is pretty small, so most of their height is their legs. These creatures have allegedly made 2 appearances so far. Once, people saw them in Fresno, California. In contrast, the other time was in Yosemite National Park in California. Both times they were in videos of poor quality, so it wasn't easy to find details of their upper body. But the creature is considered thin and white with no arms. At least, we can't see them. It also has pretty short and stilt-like feet. Have you heard of the slide rock bolter? It's said to be hiding somewhere in the mountains of Colorado. To be precise, in Lizard Head Mountain, only a stone's throw southwest from Telluride. It's some sort of leviathan that lives on the land. This mountain whale carefully observes its surroundings with beady eyes while chilling atop Lizard Head. It hangs from the peak while its split, clawed tail faces its body downward. If anything steps into its territory, the beast lifts its malign fluke immediately and bolts down the mountainside. With its jaw full of razor-sharp teeth wide open, it gobbles whatever or whoever is in front of it, including miners, lost tourists, and loggers. It sweeps through trees and destroys all natural life that's been in its path for more than 100 years. Or at least that's what the legend says. Wow, that's the scariest one for me so far. Altamaha. Somewhere in southeastern Georgia, close to the mouth of the Altamaha River, there's a hissing sea monster hiding. It's one of the biggest rivers in Georgia that empties into the Atlantic Ocean, and the entire area that surrounds the river is full of small islands, canals, dikes, ponds, acres of marshes, and old rice fields. Perfect for such a monster to hide, don't you think? The story says this unusual cryptid has a sturgeon-like body, including a bony ridge on its top. Due to its front flippers, the creature swims like a dolphin. His snout reminds me of a crocodile. His teeth are large and sharp, whereas his eyes are big and protruding. The beast is green or gray with a white-yellowish underbelly and is up to 30 feet long. There's no physical evidence the Altamaha really lives there, But the legends date back centuries when people started talking about an enormous snake-like beast that hissed and bellowed. Loch Ness Monster, or how many like to call it, Nessie. This myth dates back from old times, all the way to a group of people that lived in ancient Scotland known as the Picts. The legend started to grow in the 1930s. Back then, a road near Loch Ness was finished, offering a nice view of the lake without bigger obstacles. And in April of 1933, a couple noticed there was a large animal. They compared it to a prehistoric monster or dragon. Most people imagine it as a plesiosaur, which is basically a marine dinosaur. The beast quickly crossed the couple's car's path and then disappeared below the water's surface. Later that year, some researchers even found big footprints. They believed they were from a pretty soft-footed solid creature around 20 feet long. Later, some determined the tracks were the same as the ones that a hippopotamus leaves. Plus, scientists said the lake wasn't that nutrient-rich for such a large predator. There are not enough animals to support such a beast at the top of the food chain. But the legend about a giant mythological creature has moved on and still makes people across the world wonder if there's really something hiding deep down in the dark, murky waters of Loch Ness.
In the middle of a dense, foggy forest, you spot glowing red eyes. Suddenly, a strange clicking sound breaks the silence. It's not just in your head. Stretching over 2,000 miles from Newfoundland to central Alabama, the Appalachian Mountains hide terrifying creatures like Bigfoot and the Wampus cat. You might think they're just myths, but there's actually a chilling explanation behind them. First up, the Mothman. This creature is a superstar in the world of horror stories, but not many people know that its legend actually started in the heart of Appalachia, in Point Pleasant, West Virginia. Back in 1966, two couples were driving when they suddenly came across a human-sized moth, about 7 feet tall, with glowing red eyes. They totally freaked out and sped up, but the strange creature flew and chased after the car, making a screeching sound until it finally disappeared. After this encounter, the group told the police that the creature looked like a tall, muscular man with huge, white wings, but they couldn't see its face because of the hypnotic effect of its eyes. Since then, the Mothman has become a famous urban legend. People swear they've seen similar creatures in other parts of the US, like Chicago and Gallipolis, Ohio. Theories about what people saw range from a balloon with a flashlight tied to it to extraterrestrial beings visiting Earth. But it's also possible that it was just a bird, more specifically, a barred owl. People probably mistook a bird for this creature because the barred owl looks eerie in the dark. It has spooky eyes and makes creepy clicking sounds. Still, these birds aren't huge, so it's strange how they've been mistaken for such a scary monster. Wait, what did people actually see then? The second strange beings are known as the moon-eyed people. This was a group of bearded, flat-faced, pale people with big blue eyes who supposedly lived all across Appalachia. Why did I say supposedly? Well, because no one could ever prove they actually existed. The stories about them were part of the Cherokee folklore, so we don't really know how reliable the information is. Still, their legends creeped out both locals and visitors in Appalachia. The moon-eyed people were said to come near a house at night, and people inside would hear them talking. But they were warned not to go outside, and no matter what happened, they couldn't watch them. In the morning, they'd find their corn gathered as if someone had helped them. Or the opposite, fields completely cleared like a whole group of men had been working there and taken all the crops. One of the most famous stories about them involves a mysterious stone wall found at Fort Mountain State Park. It was built between the years 500 and 1500, but no one knows who actually built it. Some people believe it was the moon-eyed people's work, and the ruins today are proof they really existed. They might not be delusional, though. One theory suggests that the moon-eyed people were actually Welsh people. At the time, they were in Appalachia, mining the mountains, and the Cherokee gave them this nickname because they lived underground and had great night vision. Hey kitty kitty, come here. Oh wait, what's that? According to legends, the Wampus cat is a half-dog, half-cat creature that roams the Appalachians after dark, or just before dawn. And it can run totally upright on 2 legs. So if it comes running after you like a human would, you'd better hide fast and don't look at it. Rumor has it that its yellow eyes can pierce the hearts and souls of anyone unlucky enough to cross its path, driving them to the edge of madness. Okay, that's probably just folklore, but the real-life creature that might be hiding behind these legends isn't much friendlier. The stories describe the Wampus cat as a kind of underwater panther, so some experts believe it sounds a lot like a mountain lion. Apparently, they're really strong swimmers and cross a large lake without much difficulty. Now, let's say you're driving in the Appalachian region at night. Suddenly, you spot an animal in the middle of the road. You slow down and take a closer look. It looks like a deer, but there's something off. Its eyes are too close together, its head is misshapen, its neck is too long, and its legs move in unnatural ways, almost like a puppet on strings. Oh, and even if you honk, this creature won't move. It's definitely not afraid of you. This is the not deer. Although some people have reported sightings as far away as Texas and even Norway, it's definitely an Appalachian myth. One young woman said she was hiking when she spotted a doe. Suddenly, the animal looked right at her, and she noticed that all of its knees were bent backwards. Any direction a deer's knee is supposed to go, the deer's knees did not. Oh my. Anyway, the internet is flooded with people talking about the not deer and its creepy behavior. But the thing is, we can't find a single photo or video that proves it actually exists. So what could it be? One explanation points to sick animals. There's a neurological condition known as CWD that affects different deer species like elk, moose, and even reindeer. It causes the brains of infected animals to degenerate, leading to loss of body functions and abnormal behavior. Since the symptoms match what some people describe as not deer behavior, it makes sense to think this condition could be behind the strange sightings. The last creature on our list, the one and only Bigfoot. You know, that large, hairy, human-like creature that walks upright and roams the dense forest in the US. In the Appalachian Mountains, there have been Bigfoot sightings from the Adirondacks in New York all the way down to the Blue Ridge Mountains in North Georgia. This bizarre figure has haunted our imagination for decades, but scientists believe it could actually be a humble black bear in disguise. It turns out the American black bear is found in many of the same areas where people claim to have spotted Bigfoot. Studies show that for every 1,000 increase in the bear population, there was a 4% increase in Bigfoot sightings. And there are 2 main reasons why the American black bear could be the perfect imposter. The first reason, they're big. Adult males can weigh up to 660 pounds and grow up to 6 feet long. The second reason, while we think they primarily walk on 4 legs, they are perfectly capable of standing upright. In fact, not only are they capable, they do it all the time. They stand up to get a better look at something, sniff the air, or just to appear bigger when they feel threatened. When they do that, they definitely look like a human-like figure. And for those people who aren't used to being around bears, it's easy to mistake them for something more sinister and out of this world. Now you might be wondering why so many strange sights and creatures are said to live in the Appalachian, and the answer might be linked to the region's age. The process that led to the creation of these mountains has been going on for over 480 million years, which means they're older than Saturn's rings, for example. Over all this time, the region has gone through some drastic changes in its composition, creating a huge number of ecological niches with varying elevations, slopes, aspects, temperatures, and rainfall. And according to experts, the reason the region is so full of bizarre legends isn't just because the mountains are old, but because they still look old. Since a large part of Appalachia is basically untouched by humans, much of that ancient biodiversity is still around and seems unknown to us. This has created a landscape full of deep forests, mist-covered valleys, and winding rivers. A place where secrets seem to be hiding in the fog. And over the centuries, the isolation of the Appalachians only allowed these stories to grow.
Alrighty folks, gather around and let me tell you about the Manananggal, a real charmer of a mythical creature from Filipino folklore. She's often described as a lady who likes to snack on sleeping pregnant women. But here's the twist. During the day, she's all dolled up and looking like a total babe. But come nightfall, she detaches her torso and spreads her massive bat-like wings to fly off into the darkness in search of her next victim. And she doesn't just stop at pregnant ladies. Nope. Sometimes she'll use her good looks to lead astray men and take them to her secret hiding spot where she'll feast on their heart, intestines, and other internal organs all night long. Yikes. If you're ever faced with a Manananggal and want to stop her from reattaching her body before sunrise, just sprinkle some salt, ash, or crushed garlic on the remaining half of her body. Easy peasy, right? So keep an eye out for this winged wonder and don't forget the garlic! Okay, so check this out. In German folklore, there's this crazy creature called an owl. Basically, it's like a vampire, mixed with an incubus. And it wears this dope hat called a Tarncap that gives it all kinds of powers. This dude is all about preying on women at night by messing with their dreams. Oh, and it's into breast milk and sucking the blood of men and kids. The Alp can shapeshift into all kinds of stuff, like cats, pigs, dogs, snakes, and even butterflies. And it's got this evil eye that can totally mess you up with bad luck or sickness. But don't worry, you can protect yourself by hiding a broomstick under your pillow, pointing your shoes towards the door, hanging iron horseshoes from the bedpost, or putting a mirror on your chest. And if all else fails, just leave the lights on all night and shove a lemon in its mouth if you catch it napping during the day. Meet the Pontia Nuk, a spooky ghost from Malay mythology. Legend has it that she was a woman who passed away while giving birth, and now she's out for revenge. She's not your average ghost either. She's got long black hair, sharp fingernails, and a blood-smeared white dress. But watch out, because she's also a master of disguise. She can transform into a beautiful woman to lure in her prey before ripping out their insides. If you're ever out at night and hear the cries of babies or feminine laughter, beware. That could be the Pontia Nuk coming to get you. And if the sounds are quiet, she might be right around the corner. So keep your wits about you, and don't fall for any too-good-to-be-true ladies. Hey, did you know that according to Irish legend, every family has their very own banshee? This banshee lady is supposed to let out a piercing wail or shout when someone in the family is about to kick the bucket. Talk about a not-so-subtle warning, but don't let her eerie cry trick you. This banshee lady is said to be drop-dead gorgeous with long flowing locks and crimson eyes from all her crying. She's also known for wearing a gray shawl over her green threads. Fashionable and spooky? We're into it. Some people even say that this banshee can transform into a sweet-singing young lady who foretells the doom of the family. Yikes. And if that's not enough to give you goosebumps, she's also been spotted hunched over in the woods, crying her eyes out at night. Sounds like a real party animal, doesn't she? So next time you hear a blood-curdling scream in the middle of the night, just remember, it might just be your friendly neighborhood banshee giving you a heads up. Now let me tell you about the Kalupiluit. These creatures are like the boogeyman of the Arctic. They live near the ice floes and are known for snatching up kids who get too close to the water. But don't worry, it's just a myth to keep children safe. Now, the appearance of these critters varies from story to story, but they all have some things in common. They've got slimy green skin, long hair, and long fingernails. Their hands are webbed like a fish, and they wear these fancy parkas made out of eider duck feathers. Oh, and watch out for their flippers. One of them can emit a sound that'll paralyze you. But don't fret, you can outsmart them. Some clever Inuit hunters figured out that if they asked the Kalupiluit to shapeshift into a seal or whale, they could easily finish it and bring home a tasty catch. Yum! Some stories say that these creatures use kidnapped children to keep their hair looking fabulous. Talk about dedication to hair care. Others say that the kids are just devoured or used to fuel the Kalapilowit's youth. But here's a wild tale for you. There was once a grandma who couldn't feed her grandson, so she called upon a Kalapilowit to take him away. The tribe eventually got back on their feet, and a young couple went to rescue the boy. They found him tethered to seaweed by the Kalapilowit, but every time they got close, she'd drag him back underwater. They ended up waiting until sunrise to cut him loose. Yeah, the Kalapilowit may be spooky, but they're just looking out for the kiddos. And who knows? Maybe they'll give you some hair care tips if you're lucky enough to meet one. Let me present to you the scariest horse-like monster in all of Scotland, the Nucklavi, or Nuckalavi. This bad boy has a skinless body, a head 10 times bigger than a human's, and a breath so poisonous it can destroy animals and crops. So, it's got wicked powers that can cause chaos all over the islands. But fear not, because there's an old spirit known as the Sea Myther who can control this terrifying beast during the summer months. The Nucklavi has roots in Norse and Orcadian folklore, and was first documented by the mysterious Joe Ben using some fancy Latin manuscripts back in the 16th century. Ernest Marwick, an Orcadian writer and folklorist, thinks that this evil sea creature is similar to the Norwegian Nok, the Nuggle of the Shetland, and the shape-shifting Kelpie or water Kelpie. So, if you're ever out and about in Scotland and come across this scary guy, just remember, call on the Sea Myther and run for your life. This dude is South African Tokolosha. It may look like a gremlin, but trust me, it's way more mischievous. Apparently, witches and shamans can summon them with their magical powers, but there are ways to keep these troublemakers in check. One way is to give them some curdled milk. Apparently it's their favorite, and trim their hair so they can see. If that doesn't work, you can call in a witch doctor to use some good old-fashioned magic to exorcise them away. Now, according to South African folklore, these tokoloshes are mostly invisible and can suck on a stone to stay that way. So, if you want to keep them away from your home, scatter some special blessed salts, aka tokoloshe salts, along your door frames and windowsills. Or if you're feeling extra cautious, put some bricks under your bed's legs. Better safe than sorry, right? Have you heard of the Chimera? She's a total monster, literally. This fire-breathing female hybrid is made up of all sorts of animal parts. Think lion-like body, goat-like head, and a tail that ends in a snake's head. According to Greek mythology, the Chimera is the child of Typhon and Echidna, and her sisters are Cerberus and Lernaean Hydra. Sounds like a family reunion, huh? But don't worry, our hero Bellerophon was up for the challenge. The king of Lycia sent him on a mission to defeat the fearsome Chimera, and Bellerophon was the greatest hero monsters were scared of. The Chimera was no match for Bellerophon and his trusty Pegasus. Even though the king was secretly hoping the Chimera would take out Bellerophon instead, in the end, justice prevailed, and the Chimera was defeated. Well, that's it for today.
For some of us, the word Bunny Man may sound like a cute and cuddly character from a book. But for some people from Northern Virginia, it's the source of a terrifying urban legend. The story goes that if you go near a certain bridge in Clifton on a certain night of the year, you could meet your doom at the hands of the Bunny Man. Unless you whack him upside the head with a big carrot, maybe. Anyway, one story behind this urban piece of folklore starts with a man named Douglas Griffin. It's said that he had been admitted to an asylum, but managed to escape back in 1904. The bus that was transporting him and some of his fellow patients had an accident. Most of the patients were found after the crash, apart from him. It was as if he'd vanished into thin air. Weeks later, strange clues started appearing in the woods. Now, if you're traveling through Italy, Spain, or even parts of Asia, seeing a rabbit dish on the menu isn't something unheard of. But if you see clues that a man is munching on bunnies on a field in Northern Virginia, now that's a bit creepy. Obviously, rumors started to spread that Douglas had this unusual diet because he needed to survive alone in the wild. Then the story got even more terrifying, as it went on to say that on the night of October 31st, of course, Douglas also began hurting people. Now don't get too freaked out just yet. The truth is, there was never actually an asylum in Clifton, and the story about Douglas Griffin may just be made up by locals. But that doesn't stop people from believing in the Bunny Man, and it's become a popular tale that's even inspired its own movie franchise. One guy who tried to get to the bottom of the Bunny Man legend is an archivist for Fairfax County. He discovered that at the root of this legend was actually a couple who had a terrifying encounter with a man who threw something at their car. Not very interesting so far, sure, but he was supposedly dressed in white or light-colored clothing. He may also or may not have some sort of object on his head, too. Did it look like bunny ears? We'll never know, but from there on, the story took on a life of its own, with people swapping stories about a man in a bunny suit chasing them through the woods. To this day, some refuse to believe that the Bunny Man legend isn't true and think that local authorities are trying to cover something up. Obviously, there's no real evidence to support their claim. Regardless of whether or not the Bunny Man was real, don't you just love a good urban legend? Especially the ones that truly make you wonder if they could actually be true. Luckily for us, we live in the age of unlimited information and have access to some great resources. It gives us the opportunity to finally put some of these legends to the test. First up, the question on everyone's mind: can a rat really crawl up a toilet? Drumroll, please. And the answer is yes. I mean, sure, rats can make cute and cuddly pets, but the idea of them using your toilet as their personal swimming pool is not so adorable. One video posted online explains the whole process in a creepy yet fascinating way. These sneaky little rodents can climb up pipes and squeeze through the twists and turns of your toilet like a contortionist in a circus. And believe it or not, they're actually good swimmers. And apparently, they hold their breath really well and don't mind too much what exactly they are swimming in. Some other urban legends are a bit more virtual. Picture this: it's 1981, and you're hanging out at your favorite suburban arcade. You've been playing for hours, but there's one game that's got you hooked: Polybius. It's got a surreal digital glow that bounces off the faces of all who are playing it. You can't stop playing, and neither can anyone else. Soon enough, things start to get weird. Players start feeling nauseous, stressed, and having horrific nightmares. The game is serviced more often than other games, with men in black suits opening the machine every week to record its data. But they don't seem interested in its coins. Soon after Polybius appears, the mystery arcade game vanishes without warning, taken by the same men in black suits, leaving no record of its existence. Now that's the main story at least, and it's one of the biggest unsolved mysteries in the gaming world. Like all good stories, it's kept alive by its fans. But here's the thing: most people don't think the game ever existed. The legend of Polybius is full of conflicting details. No one even has a copy of the original game file, so no one can agree on what the game was actually like. Was it a puzzle game? What kind of graphics did it use? But there's one thing everyone seems to agree upon: it was disorienting and confusing. In it, colorful geometric shapes bend and fold from a central portal like some sort of digital hypnosis. According to legend, the intense combination of vector and raster graphics in Polybius made the mind susceptible to concealed messages from authorities. While the details of the game are ambiguous, its story does have some roots in real events. Back in the 80s, some say there was a game called Tempest that made some players feel a little queasy. Okay, maybe queasy is an understatement. Apparently, it caused uncontrollable movements and motion sickness in players. Talk about a wild ride. Even the subliminal video game connection is real. Some official agencies do use video games to train their personnel. Combine all of that with the short-lived 1985 game Polyplay, an 8-game arcade cabinet that was recalled, possibly for copyright reasons, and you have a pretty solid foundation for a massive fraud. Oops, urban legend. If you think about it, even the name Polybius itself could have been a misunderstood version of Polyplay. I think I would file this under horsepucky. Now let's travel to Europe for a bit of this next might be a real urban legend. The mystery figure that roamed a local forest in Switzerland was the source of a really intriguing story. For a whole decade, People were talking about this person who wore a gas mask and camouflage attire while walking around. Despite numerous eyewitness accounts, no one could confirm the existence of this creepy character, making him a legend in the eyes of many. They even gave him a cool name, Le Loyon. The plot thickens though. In 2013, someone finally captured a photo of Le Lion, proving that he was indeed real. Later, his gas mask and coat were found in the woods, along with a note that suggested he was harmless and just couldn't take being seen as a monster anymore. Did he disappear? Did he move on to another forest? Did he go undercover as a friendly clown? We may never know, but one thing's for sure. Le Lion will always be remembered as the spirit who roamed the Swiss forest for a decade, and we can't help but wonder what his story truly is. Now, you've seen the movies, read the books, or at least heard about the name Tarzan. Well, it turns out he might not actually be just a figment of someone's imagination. A possible real-life Tarzan might have indeed existed at one point. And get this, it could be the 14th Earl of Streatham, William Charles Milden. This man's survival tale sounds way too familiar to Tarzan's. Both came from English noble families and were shipwrecked in Africa. Milden's ship was destroyed during a 3-day storm, and he claimed he survived by clinging to a piece of wreckage. He washed ashore and started to pal around with a group of apes. He remembered saying of that time in his life, "For some strange reason, I was not afraid of these strange creatures. They were hideous to look upon, but seemed gentle and harmless." He became so close with the apes that they provided him with food, and he even built himself a tree house. He was really strong and flexible for his age, but unlike his cartoon counterpart, never became the leader of the animals. Unlike Tarzan, he didn't speak to the apes, but did figure out some form of communication.
He's known as a creature of pure terror, a monster that inspires fear in all who gaze upon him. His name is Bigfoot. This hulking beast was said to have shaggy fur covering his massive frame. His eyes were glowing, fiery orbs of orange and red, and his teeth were sharp and jagged like knives. His massive hands had long, sharp claws that seemed to glow with weird energy. His most famous feature? His feet. Massive and heavy, with thick, sturdy toes that seemed to be able to crush anything in their path. Whenever he moved, the ground trembled beneath his weight, and his growls sounded like a volcano was just about to erupt. Sure, we've all heard the stories and seen the movies, but did Bigfoot really exist? Is he still out there, just waiting for people to notice him? Let's look at some of the information we do know for sure. Bigfoot became well known back in 1958 when a man from California named Ray Wallace claimed to have found large footprints near his work area. For years, his kids believed the whole thing was just a prank pulled by their father. People have reported finding many more footprints and a few handprints that were similar, but some of them were left by bears, others were fake, and many others can't be explained to this day. But the legend of Bigfoot predates this event. In 1955, a man named William Rowe said he saw a creature that looked partly human and partly animal while hiking on Mica Mountain in British Columbia. He later signed a document stating that the creature was about 6 feet tall, had brown silver-tipped hair, and had thick arms, broad feet, and breasts. Then there's the story of Albert Ostman, who claimed in 1924 that while he was camping alone near Toba Inlet in British Columbia, he was taken by a Bigfoot and held captive by the Bigfoot's family for a week. The man eventually escaped when the Bigfoot, father of the family, became sick after eating some of Ostman's belongings. There are no other Bigfoot memorabilia like the 1967 video called the Patterson-Gimlin film. Some people think it shows Bigfoot, but most scientists think it was just a person in a costume. The film is still often used by people who believe in Bigfoot as evidence that it's real. There are even scientists who think the film might not be fake. It's become more believable over time because of new scientific discoveries about how our ancestors walked. This opinion is based on the discovery of Lucy. a 3.2 million year old human ancestor that walked on two legs, which proves that our early ancestors were similar to apes and could walk like humans, just like Bigfoot. There's also a video on YouTube of Bigfoot in Provo Canyon, Utah that's very popular. The video shows a big black animal in the trees, possibly eating or looking for food. As the camera zooms in to get a closer look, the creature stands up on two legs like a person. Obviously, the people filming it got extremely frightened and ran away at once. The video was posted in 2012 and has been watched more than 7.6 million times. The people who made the video were not really looking for Bigfoot. They were simply camping and wanted to see some deer. They initially thought that they saw a bear until the huge creature stood up and looked straight at them. They ran to their car and left their tent and stuff behind. Their belongings are most likely still there. Skunk apes are said to be a species of Bigfoot-like creatures that people think live in swamps in the southern United States. In 2013, a video was posted on YouTube showing a potential skunk ape in a swamp in Mississippi. The creature in the video appears to be very strong and has short, broad shoulders, a small head, and long legs. Some believe the video is real, but others think it's a hoax because the camera often moves around quickly or the person filming runs away just when the creature is about to be seen clearly. This makes it hard for skeptics to believe in the existence of Bigfoot, and they've continuously asked for more evidence, like pieces of Bigfoot bones. This is probably the reason why two men claimed that they had found a frozen Bigfoot while hiking in Georgia. But what they had found turned out to be nothing more than a gorilla suit. They didn't back down, though. One of the men also later claimed to have injured and captured another Bigfoot in Texas in 2012, and even charged people to see it. But later he admitted it was fake too. In reality, we have no physical evidence that this creature exists or ever existed. Whenever people claim they have proof that Bigfoot exists, scientists usually find that the evidence is actually from well-known animals or humans. For example, in 2014, a group of researchers examined 36 hairs that were believed to belong to Bigfoot. Almost all of the hairs turned out to be from animals, such as cows, raccoons, and deer, as well as from humans. They did find something surprising, though. Two of the hairs were similar to those of an extinct type of polar bear. Scientists concluded that these hairs could have come from a new type of bear, or a mix of different bear species. But they were definitely from a bear, not a primate like Bigfoot. Another possible theory that could explain these Bigfoot sightings is that the noticed creatures are, in fact, chimpanzees, gorillas, or orangutans. This idea is often mentioned in connection to skunk apes because some people believe that the hot and humid climate in the southeastern U.S. could let this species thrive there. Sure, Bigfoot might be entirely made up, but it may not be on purpose. Our brain has a lot to do with it, too. All because of a little thing called pareidolia. This is the tendency to see patterns or familiar objects in random or ambiguous things, such as seeing faces in clouds or animals in inanimate objects. It's a psychological phenomenon that can lead people to perceive things that are not actually there. We might be tricked by our brains into thinking we've seen Bigfoot, because we tend to spot human-like shapes in our environment. This often happens with blurry photos or videos of the supposed Bigfoot. Other people believe that Bigfoot is a type of ape that used to live in Southeast Asia and is now extinct. These people think that Bigfoot may have come to America by a land bridge that used to connect Siberia and Alaska during the last ice age. However, there's no evidence of this ape in America, and we don't know much about how it moved because scientists only have the fossils of its jaw and teeth to study. Some specialists believe this ape might have walked on two legs, but others say it walked on all fours because it was so big. Some scientists believe that Bigfoot could be an extinct species called Paranthropus, which used to have a skull similar to that of a gorilla. It walked on two legs. However, the Paranthropus fossils have only been found in Africa, so there's no reasonable explanation for the Bigfoot sightings in America. Others believe that Bigfoot could be related to the Gigantopithecus, a type of ape that lived millions of years ago. Some people have even suggested that Bigfoot could be the missing link between apes and humans, but this idea is not supported by scientific evidence. There are theories that claim that Bigfoot was actually a Neanderthal. We do know for sure that Neanderthals are extinct because there are no known living individuals of this species. All evidence suggests that Neanderthals became extinct around 40,000 years ago, and there have been no confirmed sightings or discoveries of Neanderthals since then. Also, no remains of these species have ever been found in the Americas.
A girl, once and beautiful, ended up in a grave with a huge sickle across her neck. There were no signs of violence, no indications of any actual crime. Yet, someone was clearly terrified when they forced her into that grave. So scared that they even placed a padlock on the big toe of her left foot. They wanted her to stay in the tomb once and for all, fearing she might rise and take revenge on them. So, a whole community turned against a young lady who wasn't even over 20 years old, deeming her to be of ultimate danger. Do you see what I'm driving at? Let's test your historical knowledge. Who has been feared throughout human history to such an extent that commoners couldn't shake off that lingering sense of dread, even after their passing? If you say witches, warlocks, and vampires, you'd be completely correct. Just a little hint here. If you can't overpower someone physically, you can do it supernaturally. Well, that's at least what people used to think back in the 17th century. Not only was there a sickle and a padlock, but there were also signs of an attempt to twist the girl's corpse in the grave and turn it face down. This attempt had failed, leaving her spine buckled and twisted. By the way, the padlock wasn't necessarily meant to lock a vampire. It was more likely a talisman against evil spirits. That's a peculiar and, let's face it, very cruel way to bury someone. Yet it was a common practice for creating anti-vampire burial sites. The methods for preventing vampires from rising were quite elaborate. First off, let me introduce a term. Anti-vampire graves, known as revenant graves, date back thousands of years and have been found in various locations across Europe. Europe, you heard that right. Now before you say, hey, vampires are a Romanian thing, Dracula, duh, let me convince you otherwise. They are a part of all European folklore, meaning you can find references to them throughout Europe. With new settlements in America, vampire lore spread there too, eventually turning into the Twilight Saga. These anti-vampire burials are characterized by evidence of precautions taken to prevent those who bit the dust from rising. Such measures could include placing large stones on the deceased's legs or even piercing the body with a lance to fix it to the ground. To be completely safe, they could also consider removing the head from the torso. So, burying the body face down, cutting off the head, and pressing the body with a stone were the methods used to keep someone believed to be a demonic being from leaving the grave. Let's return to the poor lady, or rather, the girl. A couple of archaeologists, Dariusz Poliński and his partner, Magna Durodska, who happened to be partners in both crime and life, stumbled upon her grave. Strangely, all of her 206 bones remained untouched. Yet no gravestone, no name, nothing. Just a lonely grave on a hill in northern Poland. Poliński, a professor of archaeology, and Zagrodska began piecing together the story of the woman they eventually named Zosha. Carbon dating suggested she had been about 18 years old and had passed away about 350 years ago during a chaotic time in Poland's history. There is little documentation about this graveyard, which seemed to serve as a resting place for individuals marginalized by the community. Was Zosha a poor girl who had been marginalized because life forced her into the worst situation a lady could face? Not really. As the archaeologists delved deeper, they stumbled upon some hints that indicated she might have hailed from a rich family. Her burial featured a stylish bonnet, and the delicate silk along with shiny silver and gold threads found with it suggested that it was part of an elegant headdress. This all pointed to the idea that she had some serious status or wealth. But the way she was buried indicated her outsider status in the village of Pien. Perhaps her presence there was unwanted, hence the idea of her being a vampire, backed up by the manner in which she was forced into the grave and held there. By analyzing the structure of her skull and extricating DNA from her skeleton, scientists created a reconstruction of what her face might have looked like. The specialists meticulously reshaped Zosha's likeness using modeling clay on a 3D printed model of her skull, which proved to be a deeply moving experience. They remarked that while they often worked on face reconstructions, in this case, they also sought to restore her dignity. Utilizing these three methods, the team reconstructed Zosha's 400-year-old face, revealing the human story buried beneath supernatural beliefs. It's ironic, isn't it? First, people tried their hardest to make the world forget her face and prevent her from ever coming back. 400 years later, people did everything they could to bring her back to life. Her picture now is all over the internet, yet we will never see the faces of those who buried her. Alas, this reconstruction project only allows viewers to visually connect with Zosha, but her true story remains a mystery. But what we know for sure is that people who were deemed vampires were badly discriminated against, to say the least. Rumor had it that hungry vampires would even steal people to quench their thirst. Let's use math to prove this rumor wrong and prove that Zosha wasn't one of them. Back in the year 1600, there were only 537 million people worldwide. Yeah, this data may not be very accurate, but it's pretty close to reality. A physicist, Kostas Eftimiou, calculated that if a vampire had been drinking one person's blood each month, humanity would have faced extinction within a few years. Starting with one vampire and a population of 537 million in 1600, this math shows we'd have no humans left by July 1602. But here we are now. Well, while placing a stone on a corpse to make sure the vampire doesn't rise may be something new to you, there are also a bunch of stereotypical things associated with these creatures that you definitely know, such as garlic and mirrors. Funnily enough, even though it's all based on a bunch of superstitions, there's pretty good logic behind the garlic thing. You see, it contains a special compound called allicin, which is a powerful antibiotic. While people back then couldn't know what an antibiotic was, they noticed garlic was pretty effective against various conditions. Since they believed vampires were created by a particular blood condition, they also believed garlic could defeat a vampire. And there's more. There's actually a blood condition called porphyria, which makes people look like real vampires. Their skin is pale and their teeth get bigger as their gums shrink. And guess what? People who have porphyria cannot consume garlic, as it worsens their condition. Wow, that's a cool coincidence. The next superstition is a bit fresher, and it's about vampires avoiding mirrors. The first known reference to the mirrors comes from the book Dracula in 1897. But why wouldn't a vampire show a reflection? Simple. Before the plastic era we live in, mirrors were traditionally backed with silver. Silver was commonly believed to repel evil spirits, possibly because it has antimicrobial properties. Much like garlic, its healing properties may be what was supposed to scare off a vampire. Another reason why suspected vampires may have avoided mirrors is the changes to their appearance from conditions commonly confused with vampirism, like porphyria and rabies. People afflicted with these conditions may have avoided looking in mirrors for that reason, causing others to assume that vampires avoided mirrors. But if you ever met a vampire and these methods don't repel it, I have one more trick for you. Ask the potential vampire to count. It can be spilled grains, seeds, or even the holes in the fishing net if you happen to have one. Vampires are into math, so they'll stop to count, delaying them until sunrise. And we all know that vampires don't do well in sunlight. Ironically, it's Count Von Count, a vampire who teaches us how to count on Sesame Street. Welcome to the spooktacular tale of the John Lawson House in New Hamburg, just 80 miles north of New York City. This 150-year-old home is known for its creepy mannequins that used to magically change outfits and poses on the front porch. Some say these mannequins were haunted by spirits from tragic events that happened nearby in the 19th century. Back in the day, the Lawson family built this historic home in a bustling riverport village. Tragedy struck when a train accident and a destructive fire occurred near the house in the 1870s, causing chaos and taking many lives. The mysterious mannequins appeared without explanation, dressed in old-timey clothes and accessories. The homeowner was unknown when that creepy stuff was first noticed. Sometimes, mannequins would hold something in their hands, like books. Also, it seemed like those spine-chilling figures didn't fancy bad weather. They would vanish during storms and even face the site of the lethal train accident. But suddenly, in 2016, the mannequins vanished without a trace, leaving behind a mystery that still haunts the John Lawson house to this day. Will they ever return? Only time will tell. Venice, the one in Italy, not a neighborhood in California, may be considered the city of love and all, but Poveglia Island has a fishy reputation. Made up of 2 natural islands and 1 human-made one with wooden pillars and layers of earth, this place is like a creepy puzzle waiting to be solved. One island is covered in greenery, another has the main buildings, and the smallest is basically a fort. The island is now deserted with just a few lonely structures left standing. Rumor has it that about half of the land on the island is made up of human ashes. Yikes. According to stories, when a plague hit, the hospital had to figure out what to do with all the bodies. Supposedly, they ended up burning them, but some say that over 100,000 victims were actually buried in mass graves, called plague pits. The details about how all these bodies were disposed of are sketchy at best, leaving room for spooky speculation about what went down on the island. Whether they were torched or buried, the sad truth is that thousands of lives were lost and left behind on Poveglia Island. Another creepy tale involves a crazy asylum director who supposedly jumped off the clock tower after being swallowed up by a mysterious fog. But this story may have originated from shows like Ghostbusters, with no actual proof that this dude even existed. There are also whispers of patients seeing ghosts within the psychiatric hospital, adding to the island's spooky vibe. While these stories might be a bit out there, they definitely add to the mystery surrounding Poveglia Island. Despite all the exaggerated stories and urban legends, one thing remains true. Poveglia Island has a dark history filled with tragedy. This place has seen it all. The empty buildings and abandoned landscapes are like sad reminders of the sorrowful past that haunts this eerie island. Hush, don't move. We're in the clearing in Hoia, Transylvania, which has a funky reputation for being one of the creepiest places in the world. The trees there wouldn't grow in a clearing that has a perfect oval shape. Soil scientists have been unable to explain this anomaly. The area attracts a variety of people, from Romanian witches to sword-wielding Americans attempting to cleanse the forest through yoga. Hoia gained international attention in 1968 when someone captured a photograph of a mysterious flying object hovering over the clearing. Some people are sure those must have been guests from another planet. This event, along with the alleged paranormal occurrences reported by visitors, has added to the forest's enigmatic reputation. Local guides also share other anecdotes linked to this forest. For example, some time ago, a group of 60 people from Bucharest attempted to open a gate into another dimension there. If a paranormal forest doesn't send shivers down your spine, maybe this place will. Yep, there's a whole settlement at the bottom of Lake Lanier, Georgia's biggest lake, and it's filled with a secret American horror story. Terror, ghosts, and other paranormal stuff. The whole shebang. There are many spooky tales about Lake Lanier. Fishermen have reported seeing ghostly kayaks, and stories circulate about women with no hands haunting the Jerry D. Jackson Bridge. Plus, the lake has a dark side, with over 500 demises since it was created and more than 200 since 1994. People talk about good swimmers getting snatched under the water, mysterious boating accidents, and vehicles crashing into the lake for no reason. Locals will straight up tell you, don't go to Lake Lanier. And with the lake stats, it's hard to argue. Some say the lake is cursed, but it's up to you to decide. The Poison Garden is a misleading, beautiful place where danger lurks behind every leaf. It's tucked away behind spooky black gates at the Alnwick Garden. There, you'll discover a collection of over 100 plants that are not just toxic, but downright lethal. If you don't have to worry about accidentally poisoning yourself, just keep your hands to yourself. No sniffing or nibbling allowed. Venture through ivy-covered tunnels and fiery-shaped beds as you dive into the history of poison and hear some thrilling tales of infamous cases. Prepare to meet some dangerous flora like Laburnum atropa belladonna, and even the infamous Jimpy Jimpy plant that's rumored to be able to hurt you as nothing else. By the way, there are many wild stories about this dreaded plant. Some are a bit exaggerated, like the one about using the leaves as toilet paper. Ouch. But others are no joke, like horses getting stung and going bonkers. There's even a tragic tale of a person passing away from its sting in New Guinea back in 1922. So come on, take the plunge in the Poison Garden if you dare. Just remember to steer clear of any plants that could lead to a seriously bad day. You're having your vacation in Finland, the happiest country in the world. You rent a car and drive to see the lakes. What could go wrong? Suddenly, you come face to face with over 1,000 eerily still figures. These guys are dressed to impress in colorful outfits, but there's something off about them. Their heads are featureless, their bodies wooden, and they all seem to be staring in the same direction. It's like they were playing a giant game of freeze tag, but nobody remembered to yell, "Tag, you're it." These silent sentinels are known as the Silent People, and they've been scaring people since 1988. They're the brainchild of dancer and choreographer Reijo Kila. Originally hanging out in Lasila near Helsinki, they've traveled around a bit before settling in their current spot on the side of the road. Why did they move? Maybe they were tired of big city traffic and wanted a quieter place to chill. No one really knows what these peat-headed, straw-haired guys are all about. Some folks find them creepy, like they're watching your every move. Others think they're kinda sad, like a group of friends waiting for a bus that never comes. But hey, that's art for you. Open to interpretation and open to jokes about scarecrows having better fashion sense than most humans. Bonus here, there's a cafe with traditional Finnish crepes, so you may get scared there, but not hungry. In Australia's far north, there's a spooky granite mountain known as the Bermuda Triangle. Black Mountain, also known as Kalkajaka by the indigenous owners, has been the backdrop for some seriously strange disappearances dating back to 1800s. It's pretty close to Cooktown, so it has some legendary tales attached to it. They say Black Mountain was once a fierce battlefield for opposing ancestral clans. The whole place is littered with massive granite boulders stacked in a chaotic manner, where explorers, horses, and cattle seemingly vanished into thin air. For many years, people were scared by the bad reputation of this place until recent research shed some light on the dark mystery of Black Mountain, leaving no room for further speculation. Turns out, the reason for the disappearances may not be as supernatural as we thought. Lack of swimming skills, crocodiles, or just some good old-fashioned tomfoolery could have been the real culprits.
In the heart of a dense forest, a person embarks on a forest hike, delving into the hidden depths of nature's playground. But this isn't your ordinary stroll through the trees. It takes a turn towards an eerie and spine-chilling discovery. Our protagonist, with a twinkle of curiosity in his eyes, discovers a burrow hiding in the shadows. Curiosity outweighs fear, and our explorer comes up closer. It's not some random burrow. This one belongs to a fox. So, what if it's the wrong move and they should just run away? In the joyful season of spring, when nature comes alive with vibrant energy, foxes engage in their intricate dance of life. It's during this time that foxes seek solace in their underground sanctuaries. Throughout the rest of the year, when the world around them flourishes, foxes prefer to bask in the sun, finding comfort above ground, except when the weather takes a turn for the worse. It's in the most inclement conditions that they seek refuge in their burrows, shielding themselves from the elements. These burrows, known as fox earths, typically consist of only a few entrances, occasionally covered with scattered soil and debris. During winter months, industrious foxes diligently dig additional burrows in anticipation of the forthcoming spring. Sometimes, among the remnants of their subterranean journeys, lie the remains of fallen foxes, a testament to the cycle of life within these intricate underground networks. If one were to explore the vicinity of a fox earth, one would notice fresh traces of food remaining outside the burrows during the months of April to June. It's during this period, when playful fox cubs grace the earth with their presence, that remnants of their feasts can be found, a delightful sign of life unfolding. So, what do these earths look like? After all, there are other animals with dens in the forest, too. Now, let's get to the heart of the matter. Fox dens, the elusive abodes of these mischievous beings, tend to be located in areas abundant in lush greenery. You might find these creatures hiding beneath the sheltering branches of a tree, or seeking refuge beneath imposing rocks. If you stumble upon a cozy little hole that appears tailor-made for a fox, and you catch a whiff of that unmistakable aroma, accompanied by other intriguing clues like scattered bones, you've likely discovered a fox den. Alas, my curious friend, there's no foolproof recipe for where these sly foxes choose to build their dens. They possess an uncanny ability to adapt to diverse environments, be it open grasslands, dense forests, or even the unforgiving tundra. Picture this. A fox's den consists of a minimum of 4 to 5 sections. We have the grand entrance, the ever-important ramp, the main den itself, and a secret room that doubles as a food stash. Depending on the size of the pack, there might be additional rooms to accommodate the whole gang of foxes. Now imagine the grand opening to a fox's den. The entrance and the ramp form a corridor leading about 3 to 8 feet deep into the earth, connecting the outer world with the cozy haven within. But there's more. Foxes, being savvy planners, stockpile their foraged treasures in their dens. Yes, they have their own food caches, where they hide all their scrumptious finds. The number of rooms within the den may vary, adapting to the size of the pack, as these crafty creatures ensure there's enough space for giving birth and raising their adorable offspring. They might even dig extra tunnels and create additional entrances just to keep things interesting. Now let's talk about culinary affairs. Foxes are savvy gourmands who store food in large quantities, ready to weather the winter and the mating season. However, they're not extravagant hoarders. They usually stash away just enough to last them a few days, considering they don't dine on fresh prey every single day. Berries and fruits often grace their storage chambers, while any delectable meat takes center stage in their culinary adventures. Curious about the proximity of fox dens to one another? Well, if the land is bountiful with abundant food and fresh water, you might stumble upon 2 or 3 fox dens within a 10-square-mile radius. But if resources are scarce, you might have to expand your search to cover a sprawling 20 square miles to find just one den. But the saga doesn't end there. Foxes, true to their resourceful nature, often have multiple dens. They maintain the primary den, often known as the natal den, which holds sentimental value. Additionally, they keep a backup den for some unpredictable circumstances. And let's not forget their knack for claiming abandoned or borrowed dens as their own. Such clever tricksters, aren't they? Now, let's talk about these marvelous creatures themselves. Foxes come in a delightful array of species, sizes, and variations scattered all across our planet. But the star of the show is the red fox, found on every continent except frosty Antarctica. While most foxes prefer the tranquility of rural landscapes, don't be surprised if they venture into the realms of urban and suburban dwellings, where their path might cross with humans. Ah, the encounters between a fox and a human. A tale of two extremes. Some kind souls attempt to win over these animals, offering them tidbits and coaxing them into their palms. On the other hand, there are those who tremble at the mere thought of a fox, fearing their crafty and ferocious nature. Now picture this scenario. What if a fox approaches you or launches an attack? Typically, foxes pose no threat to humans and harbor no ill intentions. They prefer to feast upon small mammals or livestock, reserving their aggression for hunting or self-defense. Yet, there have been reported cases of foxes crossing paths with humans, including incidents. Therefore, knowing what steps to take if a fox approaches or pounces on you is crucial. Foxes can indeed be domesticated, yet they remain wild at heart, and their actions can be wildly unpredictable. They might momentarily embrace their tamed side, only to snap back into their untamed instincts when feeling cornered, threatened, hungry, or simply scared. Naturally, foxes view us humans as potential threats, and it's in our best interest to reciprocate their cautious approach. Never attempt to approach a fox, even if it appears docile and friendly, as its temperament can shift within seconds, catching you off guard. Avoid sudden movements and resist the urge to inch closer, as doing so might agitate or frighten our fox friend. In most cases, when a fox spots a human nearby, it will swiftly scamper away or seek refuge in hiding. However, should you find yourself locked in a standoff with a fox, the best course of action is to take a step back and allow it the space it craves. Should a fox persist in its approach, or if you encounter several foxes nearby, my dear friend, give them a wide berth and allow them their space. Refrain from approaching or attempting to feed them, especially by hand. Let them carry on with their foxy affairs while you observe them from a distance. In a situation where a fox becomes trapped, such as finding its way into a room, I implore you to remain calm. Avoid raising your voice or causing unnecessary commotion, as it may provoke the fox to attack. Instead, remain silent, keep a safe distance from the creature, and provide it with an escape route. Ensure the doors and windows remain unobstructed, granting the fox the freedom it seeks. In due time, it will make its swift exit. However, if fortune frowns upon you and you find yourself in the unfortunate circumstance of a fox attack, remember to stay composed. Refrain from unleashing your pets or pursuing the fox. Just allow it to retreat on its own accord. If the fox persists and refuses to back down, a simple round of applause or a few claps might startle it away. Now you can enjoy the forest.
Mother Nature is caring, loving, and providing, but sometimes she's also terrifying. These Reddit users have seen her dark and spooky side. They've been through the worst, and fortunately, they all lived to tell the tale. The question is, are you ready to face it and learn about her chilling, uncanny secrets? Now, imagine it's a beautiful Sunday, and you decide to do some gardening. You grab your tools and head outside, but once you start digging to plant some flowers, your hand touches something slippery, yet also sticky. And the worst part is, it's moving. You're shaking with fear, but find the courage to look at what it is. you become filled with a great relief, because fortunately, that's not a snake. It's an enormous earthworm. Well, we don't know why this Reddit user was digging the earth up, but that's exactly what they found. And if you take a look at the photo carefully, you'll notice that it's not the entire length of the worm. Some part of it is still underground, so it's actually even longer than it appears to be. Here are 2 fun facts about earthworms for you. The first one is they can regenerate to some degree if you cut them in 2. And in some species, you can even end up with 2 worms. And the second one is, the longest earthworm ever recorded was 21 feet in length when naturally extended. So, this guy hadn't even seen the worst. Take a look at these 2 crows standing on a fence. Do you notice that one of them is hiding a bone in its beak? Well, it's kind of spooky. In almost every gothic novel, crows and ravens are bad omens. Well, we all know this is just superstition. But it may actually have originated from the fact that crows are extremely intelligent and cunning. They can recognize individual human faces. They can gossip about you to the other crows. They use tools to solve problems, and they can plan for the future. But the most interesting thing is, they can hold grudges against people who are cruel to them, and even pass those to their offspring. The same goes for people who are kind to them as well. Once they love you, they'll be your friend for a lifetime. So, this Reddit user must have done something right to be rewarded by these crows. Now, let's take a look at the photo that the next Reddit user shared. The tiny pearl-like things you see on the kitchen window are no gemstones, they're actually eggs. But of what exactly? That we may never know, but plenty of Reddit users in the comment section say they might be moth eggs, or stink bug eggs. Either way, it seems like the person who posted the photo needs to do some thorough cleaning to get rid of them. If you're having the same kind of problem at your house, here's a tip on how to get rid of moths. Wash and scrub any areas you found larvae or eggs with a vinegar and water solution. If you have stink bugs, add dish soap to that mixture. Okay, this next photo was not originally shared on Reddit, but it's certainly worth mentioning when it comes to how scary nature can be. The photo is captured by a woman driving home in Minnesota. And let me tell you, this is not photoshopped or edited in any way. I bet it reminds you of that wave scene in Interstellar, right? One Reddit user even called the photo Cloudception. Guess all of us can agree, there's some sort of Christopher Nolan movie vibe going on there. The lady who took it, on the other hand, officially named it Ocean in the Sky. Well, that fits too. One meteorologist said the photo is so rare and unique that there are clouds in it that even she herself had never seen before. So it's no wonder it went viral on social media platforms. Let's be honest, each one of us probably drew a lightning bolt on our forehead and pretended to be Harry Potter at least once in our lives. But the next photo one Reddit user shared might change the way you view lightning bolts. The truck you see there, which belongs to their coworker, got struck by lightning. But as you might have guessed, the damage was done by fire. The user says the truck burned for about 10 minutes at a super high temperature before it was put out by fire extinguishers. So, it was not instant damage. To all the comic book fans out there, this is your reminder to not attempt any lightning bolt experiments to become the Flash. This wind turbine looks so sad it's almost heartbreaking to look at, right? Well, the story behind it is upsetting indeed, but in a scary way. The Texan Reddit user who posted this photo explains that the wind turbine was hit by a tornado. But these comments might cheer you up and get your mind off of how frightening tornadoes can be. One Reddit user says the wind turbine looks like its mom told it can't go to the thing. Another one suggests that the tornado took things personally and got revenge on the wind turbine for thinking it can harness the power of the wind. And one other describes the wind turbine to look like a giant robot palm tree. What's worth mentioning here is that it's a good thing the blades of the turbine didn't snap off, because if they had, the consequences would have been much more destructive. This next one might be the weirdest yet. Those toes don't belong to a forest gnome or any other fantastical creature, even though this photo sure looks like it's out of a fairy tale. And I know you're thinking about it, so let me just clarify that it's not a zombie trying to crawl its way out of the ground either. These are actually a type of fungus that is commonly known as dead man's fingers. They can generally be found in forests or any other woodland area, usually growing from the bases of rotting or injured tree stumps and decaying wood. They're fairly common in the UK, Ireland, mainland Europe, and parts of North America. The funny thing about them is the fingers vary in appearance at different stages of their life cycle, so in that manner, it's like a real human being whose body changes as they grow older. You can probably tell by the way it looks that it's very dangerous to eat one. They're very poisonous, so good thing the Reddit user who posted this photo didn't try to get a taste of it. Even Ant-Man couldn't handle this wasp. This Reddit user woke up one day only to find one monstrous wasp in their basement. Look at that giant stinger it has! It almost seems like no beekeeping clothing would protect you from it. This species of wasp is called cicada hawks, which is due to the fact that they hunt cicadas and provision their nests with them. They can be found in the eastern and Midwest US, as well as in southern parts of Mexico and Central America. Female cicada hawks use their stings to paralyze their prey, rather than to defend their nests. Unlike most other wasps and bees, they do not sting unless they're handled roughly. On the other hand, male cicada hawks only fight with other insects and cannot sting. And in case you're wondering, they're generally not aggressive towards humans and usually fly away when swatted at. Phew! The last Reddit user we have for you today used to keep their duck eggs in the pantry. One day, they went and checked the place after hearing a lot of noise coming from there. And what they found was 2 snakes wrapped around the eggs. Well, at least the ones that the snakes didn't eat yet. But the crazy thing is, when the Reddit user got rid of them both and came back, they found another one in there. And this time, there weren't any eggs left. If only they could speak Parseltongue, things would be so much easier.
Welcome to the Hall of Monsters. I see you are wearing your protective gear. That's good, because during your visit here, your safety is not guaranteed. So, every step you take, beware, for the monsters you'll see ahead are the scariest ones from Japanese folktales. If they don't haunt you during your visit, they sure will haunt your dreams. And let me tell you, no anime you have watched could have prepared you for this. I already see doubt and fear in your eyes. So let's begin our tour before you lose that little flicker of courage left within you. There's no better monster to greet you than the Naparabo. You might not notice it, but it is happy to have new victims. I mean visitors. Naparabo looks like an ordinary human being in almost every way. That is why it can blend in seamlessly with human society. But things will quickly get uncanny once you meet face to face with it. You see, it has no face at all. Its head is like a blank orb. But here's the thing. Naparabo is quite harmless. It only frightens people. That's it. In legends and stories, it usually does that by impersonating someone familiar to its potential victims. And once it has their attention, it causes its features to disappear. Almost as if erasing a pencil drawing. What is left is a blank, smooth sheet of skin with no eyes, nose, or mouth. So, as you might have imagined, its true identity and what it really looks like is unknown. One of the stories in which Naparabo appears is about a lazy fisherman. Despite his wife's warnings, he goes fishing from a sacred imperial koi pond. On his way there, he meets another fisherman who also warns him not to go there. Still, he ignores him. Once he arrives at the pond, a beautiful young woman begs him not to fish there. But he doesn't listen to her either. That is when she wipes off her face. When the fisherman runs home to hide with fear, his wife confronts him and criticizes him for his wrongdoing. Plot twist, only to wipe her face as well. Speaking of fish and ponds, let's move on to Cup Fa. Don't fall for their rather funny and mascot-like appearance. Cup Fa is a dangerous monster you wouldn't want to cross paths with. These creatures, which are often depicted as humanoid turtles, live in and around water bodies such as lakes, ponds, or rivers. Cup Fas are generally the size of a human child, yet they are physically stronger than a grown man. Their skin color can vary from different shades of green to bright red and even blue. In addition, they can either be slimy or covered in scales. As unique as each cupfaw can be, they all have a turtle shell on their back and a mouth resembling a beak. Their arms and legs are webbed between the toes and fingers, but the most characteristic part of their appearance is the bowl-like objects that lie on top of their skulls. This is considered to be the source of cupfaw's power and life force, and must be kept filled with water at all times. If this water spills or the bowl is damaged in any way, a cupfaw can become incredibly weakened and will be unable to move. Cupfaws are known to cause mischief. Although they can befriend humans, you should always approach one with caution, because they might try to lure you into the water to feed on you. However, there's also a chance they might challenge you to a sumo wrestling match. Just know that they are really good at it before accepting this challenge. Yet again, if you do find yourself in a match, here's a pro tip. Find a way to trick the cupfaw into bowing so low that the water in its dish spills out. And hey, if you refill that water later, you can bring the creature under your command. Take a look at this lady here. She seems to be sleeping peacefully, right? Well, look again. There's something strange going on with her neck. Rokurokubi might appear as an ordinary woman by day, but when it's nighttime and her body is asleep, her neck stretches to incredible lengths and roams around freely. Although Rokurokubi is no less creepy than the other creatures, there is something that makes her different. It is that, unlike others, she is actually not born as a monster. She used to be a human being just like us, but she was transformed by a curse resulting from some evil action or misdeed. But the story gets sadder, because the mentioned misdeed doesn't necessarily have to be her own doing. In many cases, it is either Rokurokubi's husband or father who actually committed evil actions. But she's the one paying the price because the curse only affects women. If you think Rokurokubi cannot be that harmful or scary with that heartbreaking backstory, then you're right. Her head might attack small animals sometimes, or she might cause mischief by scaring nearby people. But that's mostly it. What she loves to do in her night travels, however, is to lick up lamp oil with her long tongue. Well, who are we to judge someone's favorite food? Nukakubi is Rokurokubi's much scarier sister. She is like an advanced version of her, sort of like an upgraded Pokemon. While Rokurokubi's head is always attached to her body, Nukakubi's head can come off from the neck and float around far and away from her body. The worst part is, though, she can get bloodthirsty sometimes, and that's when her detached head will start preying on humans to quench that thirst. However, she is not invincible. It is believed that if her body moves by any chance while it is sleeping, and her head is still floating around as that happens, then her head cannot return back to the body. Hope that comforts you a bit. You see a roll of cotton. I see a life-threatening monster. According to Japanese folktales, especially the myth of Tsukumogami, inanimate objects receive a soul, therefore become alive and self-aware after serving their owners for 100 years. Although they are usually harmless, they might tend to play small pranks on people. Yet again, they still have the capacity to get angry and vengeful, especially if there are people who threw them away or didn't treat them well. They might group up to take revenge. Ittan Momen is one of those object monsters. These possessed long and narrow sheets of cloth which were used to make clothes, can be seen flying through the night sky. They are often malicious and attack people by wrapping their bodies around a person's face and neck, strangling or smothering them. In some tales, it is said that wrapped cloths would spin around and quickly come flying to wrap themselves around people and take them away to the skies. Joker's laughter is gonna sound like music to your ears once you hear this lady's. Waruhion is a female-looking monster that lives in the mountains, but despite her non-threatening appearance, meeting one will actually put you in a really dangerous position. She will smile and start laughing at you, and once she does, you'll realize that her laughter is somewhat toxic and infectious. It will cause you to start laughing along too, but even if she leaves, you will continue laughing after her until you are out of breath and unable to stand. Even if you were strong enough to resist laughing along with her, you would still not be safe. You see, merely hearing her laughter, no matter how far away she cackles, is enough to put you in a stupor. You'll be haunted by that annoying and ear-piercing sound wherever you go, for the rest of your life. However, it's not like anybody who travels through the mountains will meet her. there is one way to avoid this laughing curse altogether. You see, she appears to people only on the 1st, 9th, and 17th day of each month. So, plan your travels accordingly.
Currently, there are approximately 20 billion animals inhabiting our world. If everything were ideal, we would have 5 billion more animals on Earth. But many species have gone extinct, and around 44,000 species are currently in danger. The largest, most recent mass extinction event in history occurred during the dinosaur era, leading to the eradication of 75% of species on Earth. The Tulachi wallaby is a long-lost relative of today's kangaroo, but they had a hidden superpower, night vision. That's why they were mostly active at night. They were 3 feet tall and fed on grass, fruit leaves, and other plants. Wallabies lived in grassy areas near swamps and other water bodies, but not for long. By the 19th century, their numbers had gone down, bringing them to the edge of extinction. Only 14 wallabies had been left in the wild by 1920. A rescue mission was launched. They tried to capture the last 14 animals to protect them. But the situation got out of control and 10 wallabies lost their lives. The 4 remaining ones were transferred to a special facility, and in 1935, the last animal passed away. Only one picture of the Tulachi wallaby is left now. There were reports of the animal's sightings after that, but no proof was shown, and the creature was officially declared extinct in the 70s. Short-faced bears were a unique species that lived in North America, particularly Alaska. It was a massive bear, weighing around 1,500 pounds. When standing on its hind legs, it was around 12 feet tall, a whole foot taller than today's biggest beast in this family, the polar bear. This animal was different from today's bears because almost all of them are omnivores, except for polar bears. But this monster was solely carnivorous, which was the reason for their extinction. During the end of the Ice Age, many herbivores were gone, and those bears did not have enough food to survive. They were the Usain Bolt of the bear world, the fastest Bruins to have ever lived, reaching a top speed of 40 miles per hour, which is 5 miles faster than grizzlies. There are around 400 million pigeons in the world now. Some time ago, in America, a species of birds called passenger pigeons were abundant throughout the country, especially in the eastern forests. There were more than 1 billion of them, but they went from 1 billion to 0 in a few years. They had small heads and necks, but long tails and wings and strong breast muscles that allowed them to fly super long distances. The last passenger pigeon passed away in captivity in 1914. It was named Martha. With that, the ecosystem in the U.S. has never seen this bird again. Now, elks are enormous animals, but they look tiny when you compare them to long-gone Irish elks. That elk was around 7 feet tall at the shoulder with a humongous antler of 12 feet. Today, elk are only 4.5 feet tall at the shoulder and have around 4-foot-long antlers. Despite its name, this elk was found all over the world, from Asia to Europe. It got its name because, in Ireland near Dublin, researchers found a perfectly preserved specimen. Since then, it's been called the Irish elk. The last one passed away in Ireland. The main reason for their disappearance was their inability to adapt to changes. When the Ice Age ended, the elk could not survive and became extinct. Now, somewhere deep in the forests of Costa Rica lives the interesting-looking golden toad. It was discovered in 1966 in one particular spot where all toads would gather to mate. In 1967, a large population of this golden nugget was noted in that same spot. But the following year, only 10 to 11 toads were seen, and the year after that, in 1968, only one lonely male toad showed up at the spot. For years, there were searches for golden toads. In 2004, the toads were officially declared extinct. Humans were not responsible this time. The drought in the area in the 80s had a significant impact on the toads. Still, the last straw was the arrival of a new fungal species that caused the animal's skin to thicken, eventually leading to the toad passing away. This chytrid fungus is responsible for the extinction of more than 90 frog and amphibian species, becoming one of the biggest threats to their lives. Now, Canada is a very cold country, no surprise there, and nobody would expect tropical birds like parrots to live there. However, there was a parrot species that lived in America and some parts of Canada. I'm talking about the Carolina parakeet. Those were truly beautiful birds with orange-yellowish heads and green bodies. Their favorite rest spots were big trees alongside rivers. This parrot's favorite food was cocklebur seeds, which are poisonous to us, but the bird had no problem eating them. Also, they used the dangerous cockleburs as a defense mechanism. After they ingested loads of them, their meat became poisonous, and predators do not enjoy eating toxic birds. Carolina parakeets were abundant, there were millions of them. But since the Ice Age, their numbers had been gradually going down because of natural reasons, mainly temperature. By 1935, no such parakeets were left in the wild. Today's African lion had a much more prominent and notorious cousin, the Barbary lion. Those cats were mentioned in many famous old books. They were described as mean, terrifying beasts. It's believed that they were the largest lion species ever. Those big cats weighed around 600 pounds and were 9 feet from the head to tail. Unfortunately, this lion was declared extinct in the 90s due to many factors. Today, we only have one photo of this animal taken from a plane. Paradise parrots were native to Australia. They were genuinely amazing birds with captivating colors. What was unique about them was their nesting habits. They only nested in termite mounds. This parrot was always on the edge of extinction, and the reason for that is still unknown. Mice, rats, and other animals also hunted them, and it added fuel to the fire. The last bird was spotted in the year 1972. Since then, paradise parrots have only been seen in museums. The Gulf of Mexico was once home to Caribbean monk seals. This species of seals enjoyed spending time in the warm subtropical climate of the Caribbean. Most of the time, they were found near reefs and islands, foraging for food. Like most of us, they also loved sandy beaches and were usually seen in groups of 100 seals, resting before the next adventure. In the year 1886, monk seals were declared extinct. You can still see this animal in 2 museums. Both are located in the UK. As we all know, zebras have black and white stripes. But once, a zebra species had only half the body covered with brown and white stripes. The rest was just brown, and the belly was white. It was called the quagga. They lived in the southern part of Africa in grass fields and wet pastures, like today's zebras, and ate grass and other plants. The last quagga perished in 1888, but not all hope is lost. Today, extensive research is being done to bring this animal back into the wild. Australia is home to many outlandish animals, but the craziest ones are probably gastric brooding frogs. This species is not like your ordinary frog that lays eggs. They hatch their young inside their stomach and give birth by vomiting around 25 fully formed young frogs. Sometimes their stomach becomes so bloated that they have to breathe through their skin. 2 species of this frog were discovered in the northern and southern parts of Australia in the 1970s by Mike Taylor. A decade after their discovery, both species are gone. The main reason for their extinction is the chytrid fungus. Luckily for them, they're also part of a de-extinction program that's putting serious efforts into bringing them back into the wild. It looks idyllic, a vast green field with granite cliffs in the background and a river flowing through the landscape. You can see birds flying and people having a picnic. But then, a scream cuts through the laughter. No, you're not watching some horror movie. This is what happened to a visitor who found a severed hand in Yosemite National Park. Running into crime scenes in national parks is unfortunately more common than you think. Yosemite, for example, holds a record of police investigations, making it the second most dangerous park in the U.S. Not only that, but this is also a pretty huge place, bigger than some countries like Samoa or Luxembourg. You can see why this is an ideal place for you to become a missing person photo on a milk carton. Out of everyone who went missing in Yosemite, Patricia Marie Hicks' case is, I think, the most disturbing one. Remember the hand I mentioned? Well, it was found in 1983 on Summit Meadow by a visitor. The police tried to find more clues about this crime evidence, but the case eventually went cold. In 1988, a skull was discovered, but again, the case got stuck. It was only in 2021, with the help of a genetic genealogy test, that the police finally confirmed this was indeed the remains of Patricia, a woman who had been missing since 1982. However, not every missing person leaves a trace. This is the case of Sandra Jensen Hughes, last seen in July 2020. Sandra was camping alone in the nearby Sierra National Forest when she crashed her vehicle. Passers-by offered help, but for some uncanny reason, she refused it. This was the last time anyone ever saw her. All her stuff was still at her campsite, except for her sleeping bag, found 2.5 miles north of where she crashed her car. Sandra is not the only person still being searched by the police. In fact, there are more than 30 cold cases of missing people in Yosemite alone, including a guy who separated from his group in 2011 at the top of Upper Yosemite Falls, a man who has been missing since 1972, and even a guy who vanished 116 years ago. In most cases, people disappear in circumstances less grim than the one involving Patricia Hicks, for example, but it doesn't make these cases less tragic. So what are the reasons why people go missing? First things first, Yosemite Park is the home to 9 waterfalls, including the biggest one in North America, standing at nearly 2,500 feet. Many people like to visit it to go fishing, kayaking, and hiking. However, the water stream velocity increases near waterfalls, and falling from a waterfall is not a Woody Woodpecker experience. You'll find yourself stuck in a powerful whirlpool or have an unpleasant meeting with rocks, most possibly a smashing one. Another natural reason may be that Central California is prone to extreme storms, which can make the river rise suddenly and even form waterspouts. One more famous attraction in Yosemite National Park are the mountains. There are more than 10 popular sites with heights that range from 4,000 feet to 10,850 feet. Some mountains are so tall, climbers must spend the night in a makeshift camp halfway up the granite wall. It is quite popular, and even though you need a special permit for these types of rock climbing, you don't need to be a pro to climb smaller mountains. This explains why so many people get hurt falling from tall places. Besides, rock climbing causes permanent damage to the mountains, and the valley is prone to rock falls. Now, if you're like me and are terrified of climbing, the second best option is hiking, which just so happens to be the #1 reason people fall in the first place. The hikes in Yosemite are some of the hardest hikes in California, and you can bet even an experienced hiker can make a mistake and get lost. In 2024, for example, the body of a former park ranger and pro hiker, Kirk S. Thomas Olson, was found after he tried to venture along an especially complicated trail. 20-year-old Grace Roloff also lost her life in 2024 after slipping and falling while descending Half Dome's climbing cables during a sudden thunderstorm. And finally, animals. About 300 distinct species live in Yosemite, and guess what? Wild animals are not your pets. If you're unlucky, you might wander into a mountain lion den, which is already bad enough, given that these animals are the type that silently stalk their prey. Not a fun way to go. But the ones you really should be afraid of are black bears. They usually only eat tall grass and berries, but they will break into your car, tent, or lodge if they smell food. And unlike mountain lions, black bears are not afraid of humans. Now, the National Park Service makes it clear that rescue is not a certainty and that you must be prepared to get yourself out of whatever trouble you got yourself into. But how do I do that, you might ask? Well, here are some pro tips to avoid getting caught in a tight spot. First, try not to do solo trips. If you really want to have a me time, then let others know about your plans, like all of them. Most of those people went missing because their families didn't know about their plans. Secondly, always pack an emergency supply bag with stuff like a flashlight, compass, knife, multi-tool, paracord, and a thermal blanket. Remember, you are not Bear Grylls, and real life is not a fun episode of Naked and Afraid. Although, if not careful, you might just end up like that. Heat is also a big problem in Yosemite, so stay hydrated and go for a hike during cooler parts of the day. Seriously, drink water. The lack of water and food can lead to disorientation, a fatal symptom if you are literally in the middle of nowhere. But I'm visiting Yosemite during the winter. Well, one more reason to keep your water and food levels up, because you burn more calories when hiking in the snow. Survival expert Jesse Krebs also recommends always bringing a whistle with you if you need to call for help, especially if you haven't planned your trip well, which is a huge mistake. Wilderness is not a place for much improv, I'm afraid. Now, when it comes to hikes, some are so steep they require a cable route to help hikers. If the cables are down for some reason, avoid these areas. And do not rely on the internet or phone services to communicate with others if you find yourself in danger, because the connection in parks is usually not particularly good. Oh, and don't feed or engage with wildlife. I know bears are friendly shaped, but unfortunately, they are not your friends. Learn how to safely store your food so wild animals don't bother your camp, and do not feed them. Fail to comply, and the park might give you a $5,000 fine. Also, be careful of where and how you drive. Car crashes are the second most common reason why people need medical assistance in national parks. So use tire chains during icy periods, wear your seatbelts, and don't go driving around like you're Dominic Toretto. And just in case I didn't stress this enough, watch out for the weather. Not just because water streams are dangerous, but also because lightning is a common occurrence in Yosemite. A lightning bolt may not strike you, but it may strike a tree, causing a fire or making it fall. A thunderstorm may trigger rock slides or make a climb slippery, like it happened to Grace Roloff. And finally, be careful with strangers, okay? Remember, stranger equals danger, etc. Well, that surely was fun, light, and not terrifying at all, right? Well, hopefully now you'll be wary of strangers, nature, and everything in between. Stay safe, be smart about it, and enjoy the park. Psst, run! Really, it's not safe out there. There's a saber-toothed tiger lurking around. You better be careful. What are you doing? Don't peek. Okay, just one little peek. How's this possible, you ask? That's because you're in virtual reality, of course. These cool but very dangerous-looking big cats were alive during the last ice age. What if they decided to show up at your doorstep out of nowhere? Knock knock, a saber-toothed tiger is waiting for you to buy its cookies. Meanwhile, the coelacanth, this massive-looking fish, comes from a lineage that's been around for over 300 million years. We thought they didn't exist anymore until 1938, that is, when a live coelacanth was found again. Since then, they've been roaming the waters of the east coast of Africa and the waters of Sulawesi, Indonesia. Man, I wouldn't want to go for a swim and meet one of these fellas face to face. Their jaw has an intercranial joint, which means their mouth opens up by a lot. This is so they can eat large prey, like me. Not good. They're huge, too. Imagine a fish that's as long as you're tall and weighing as much as an average human. The decayed, a flightless bird, was thought to be gone in the year 1898. They're very cute, small and multicolored, usually not taller than your knee. But picture this. You're out for a hike in the Murchison Mountains. Looking around, you spot the bird you thought was extinct. But there they are, as happy as ever, surviving and chilling. Whole colonies of decayeds was indeed found just 50 years after they were pronounced extinct. Good job, tiny little birds. A singing dog. Ever heard of those? Riley does sing sometimes when he's bored or hungry, but these are real performers. New Guinea singing dogs. They've been only recently discovered again in the wild for the first time in 50 years. Still, they were never completely extinct to begin with. New Guineans made sure they were safe next to them. But in the wild? very rare and hard to catch a sight of. Look, there goes one. The New Guinea singing dogs are called so because of their famous high-pitched singing. They sometimes sing together too, a dog choir of sorts where they all howl together. I bet they sing better than I do in the shower. Not going far from this area, we have bats, but these ones are sort of different. You see, their ears are enormous. I guess that's why they're called the New Guinea big-eared bats. Clever. The species was found again when one of them was accidentally caught in a bat trap. Until then, I guess they were playing hide-and-seek with us, because up till 1890, they had been thought to be gone. They're still not out of the danger zone because of habitat loss. Imagine you discover a fossil of a species you thought had been extinct for a long time, yet 2 years later, a whole living group of said species is found. Well, this is exactly what happened in 1977 with the Majorcan midwife toad. It's sort of brownish in color with darker brown that makes up its skin spots. Other than that, it's just a small toad with googly eyes. The group of live toads was found close to where the fossil was, on the island of Majorca. There aren't many of them left, about 500 in fact, and as of right now, they're declared vulnerable by the International Union for Conservation of Nature. Now, are you a fan of tortoises? You will be when you take a look at this huge beauty. It's called the Ferdinanda Island Galapagos tortoise. It hasn't been seen since 1906, but on February 17, 2019, we were finally able to look at one of these beautiful creatures. It's probably out there with a few of its mates right now, but they also don't allow themselves to be seen. We only know they exist because there's a few tracks and scents. With yet another frog, we have the horned marsupial frog. They're out and about in Ecuador, in the Chocó forest to be more specific. They're called this way because of their distinctive horns directly on top of their eyes. You know the pouch kangaroos use to carry their offspring? Well, the female horned marsupial frog also has that, except it's on the back, so it acts as sort of a backpack. They develop their embryos there, and when they're ready to come out, they hatch as complete infants, unlike regular frogs where they start out as tadpoles. One more toad, the starry night toad or harlequin toad. They're black and covered with loads of white spots all over them. Lost for 30 years, it was discovered back in 2019. Picture them as big bodyguards, water bodyguards to be exact. Oh, that's a very big toad on your screen. Well, for the Arhuaco people, that's exactly what they are, guardians of water. They also have their own name for them, Guna. Sounds like a cheese. When scientists found them yet again, they came across 30 of these little creatures, but initially, they were expecting only one. Well, what a nice surprise. Here's a tiger for you, although it doesn't quite look like your typical tiger. It's called the Tasmanian tiger, and it seemingly disappeared since 1936. But then, out of nowhere, people started seeing them out there in the wild just 5 years ago in 2016. They sort of resemble dogs more than tigers, or a fox maybe. Just take a look at its muzzle. Maybe even a mix of both. Then, a few others started popping up too. And if you happen to think you're seeing one right in front of you, but you're not quite sure, check if they've got stripes on their back. They're definitely out there, but still technically marked as extinct by the IUCN. Okay, picture a horse that looks straight out of a movie scene. Tiny, gorgeous fur, very well behaved. It's tiny, but it's not a pony. It's a Caspian horse. They have an interesting backstory to them. They were discovered by Louise Leyland, who got married to an aristocrat in 1957. Having moved to Tehran, Iran, she didn't quite like how the horses behaved there, so she took matters into her own hands. She took a few people with her, and off they went to the Caspian Sea mountain. And in there, they found 3 of these beautiful tiny little horses. Now, that's how the story goes. Coming up next, a possum that was found in an unexpected place. Guess where? You have 3 options to pick from: hiding in a ski resort, in the Australian outback, or in someone's apartment in the bathroom? Which one do you choose? You have 3 seconds. The right answer is a ski resort. Yes, this possum is called the mountain pygmy possum, and it's originating from Australia. So far, there are 3 different living populations of this tiny possum, but it was believed to be extinct until just 1966. There are fewer than 100 of them, so the IUCN has marked them as critically endangered. Also from Australia is the night parrot, an absolute delight to birdwatchers. Very beautiful, yet mysterious. These little fellas live in very remote areas. You can probably count on the fingers of your hand how many times these birds have been seen since they were found again in 1979. That's how rare they are. Have you ever seen a pygmy tarsier? Neither have I. It was only in 2008 that 3 of them were caught. Scientists don't really want to lose track of their movements again, so what they did was gift them with tiny little collars. This way they can live their life as happy as ever and will know they're safe. The last one I want to tell you about is the tree lobster, but as the name might mistakenly tell you, they're not really lobsters. They're just big black bugs with huge legs. Their extinction story is a sad one. In 1920, a cargo ship got stuck on Lord Howe Island, and it had rats aboard. These rats fled the ship and ran straight to land. Even though tree lobsters are bigger than most insects, they're still relatively small compared to rats. The poor things never stood a chance. Still, in 2004, life shone again for these distinct critters. A pair of Australian scientists were out and about on the island and came across 24 of them. All of them were living beneath one single shrub. Hey, if there's enough space for everyone, it's not small, it's cozy. Bottom line, it's better to be distinct than extinct. Don't you agree?